Hello. We want to look at an important institution in our society. This institution is called the family. In our discussion, we want to look at the family in a number of areas. First, we intend to understand what a family is. We will then look at the different types of families, then proceed to look at the functions of the families, again wrap up our discussion by sparing some time to look at the features of modern families. This is important because the way families are today are not the way they were some tens or some hundreds of years ago. There have been certain changes, and therefore we want to look at the difference that exists between the families of today and those that were there before. The way I had observed earlier, this is an important area that will form the basis of the coverage that we want to have today, because the family is the foundation of all social institutions and activities that occur in our society. Welcome to the discussion. I wish to make some preliminary observations before we embark onto understanding what a family is. I want first to observe that the family is the oldest and most conservative of all the social institutions. Indeed, we know that there are other social institutions such as education, economy, the state, religion, media and sports, among others. So of all these institutions put together, the oldest of them is the family. But also the family is also the most conservative. Conservative in the sense that it is quite difficult to change family norms, unlike what you find in other social institutions. This is why we say that it's an important one, because institutions that are important, changes are normally not so easy to effect. And the family is also considered as a basic unit around which all human social organizations and activities are built. So that whether we talk about education, we talk about religion, we talk about the state, we talk about other social institutions, at the end of the day, they are built around the family. So the family is a cornerstone of all other social institutions that we have. Sociologists basically perceive families to be social institutions that have been assigned specific and important responsibilities. These responsibilities include they produce members of society, they take care of members of society, they teach the children about the norms and ways of life, they take care of the elderly, the sick, and those that for any reason are not able to fend for themselves. They also provide the labor that we need for the economy of the family and the economy of the state as well as the larger society. And also, family is also in charge of ensuring that its members are supported psychologically, emotionally, and even socially. This preliminary information is important because they depict to us how important the institution we call the family is in the survival of the society. Let's now look at what a family is. Several scholars have put forward different definitions of the family, but I want us to focus on two. Those are the definitions given by Kendall in 1999 and also Reinhardt and Winston in 1995. If we start with Kendall, Kendall understands the family is a relationship in which people live together with commitment, they form an economic unit, and care for the vulnerable, and consider their identity to be significantly attached to the group. Reinhardt and Winston, on the other hand, consider family as a group of people who are related by marriage, blood, or adoption, and who live together and share economic resources. The family can be described as a social entity and also as an institution. When we look at the family as a social entity, we basically mean that a family is created by communities' cultures or societies' cultures, and that a family is understood within a given social context. But we also look at a family as an institution. So when you look at it as an institution, basically what we mean is that there are certain basic characteristics of the family that are universal, whether that family existed in the past, or it exists today, whether it exists in the third world, the developed world, or in the developing countries. You will find that there are certain basic characteristics that are universal in families, whether we are talking of families today or family of the past, and again, regardless of the place and society where those families are found. It is important for me to emphasize one thing about the definition by Kendall. When he says that it's a relationship in which people live together with commitment, what comes out clearly is that a family is composed of people, and these people are committed to each other and also to the goals of that particular family. They also form an economic unit, meaning that families must support each other economically, must work to raise resources that are needed to take care of the family. But they also take care of the vulnerable and also consider their identity to be significantly attached to the group. If one feels that he does not belong to a given family because of the treatment that he is being given by other family members, then that aspect of commitment that Kendall speaks about might actually not be there. And therefore, it's important that this element of commitment is remained, and people who constitute a family, each of them must feel that they belong to that particular family, so that any sense, any idea, or any feeling of discrimination or prejudice towards certain people may make such people not experience that element of belongingness. It's an important aspect that at all times needs to be observed when we are trying to define what a family is. I want us to turn our attention to family structure. With regard to family structure, we want to look at two aspects. The first one is what we call family of orientation, and then the other one is what we call family of procreation. What are they? A family of orientation is a family into which a person is born and in which early socialization usually takes place. It is composed of individuals and his or her siblings, that is, brothers, sisters, and parents. Then we have a family of procreation. It is a family which is formed when an individual marries or when the family that a person forms by having or adopting children. In other words, if you are born into family A, as a person, you call the family in which you are born as your family of orientation. But it should be noted that as you grow and you become an adult, you also marry and establish your own family. So the family that you establish when you marry is the one that we call family of procreation. So that upon marriage, an individual has two families. The one in which you are born into and the one that you form when you marry. However, before an individual marries, that individual has only one family, the one in which he or she was born into, and that one is family of orientation. So family of orientation is the family that we are born into. It includes myself, my siblings, and my parents. That is family of orientation. But later on, I formed a family of procreation when I now became an adult and I got married. The family that I established is now the one is called family of procreation, where I'm the father with my wife and our children. So that family that I'm the head is the family of procreation. But remember again that I also have a family where my brothers, my sisters, and my parents are. That is the family of orientation. So an individual, upon marriage, establishes will have two families. Family of orientation, that is the family in which he was born to, which consists of himself or herself, his brothers, sisters, and parents. And then later on, when he marries, he establishes a family of procreation, where he might be the father or the mother and the children that they get. This distinction is quite important. Another important structure of the family is the extended and the nuclear families. An extended family is a family unit which is composed of relatives in addition to parents and children who live in the same household. They include grandparents, uncles, aunts, and other relatives who endeavor to share resources. Then you have a nuclear family, which is basically composed of one or two parents and their dependent children, all of whom live apart from other relatives. I think this is relatively easier concept. So if we talk about an extended family, it is the larger family where an individual lives with his parents, grandparents, and also there's a strong and established network of other relatives such as aunts, uncles, and others, cousins and others. That is what we mean by an extended family. It is fairly more large and complex with several networks. Then we talk of a nuclear family. This is a family where we find parents and their children only. Although there could be other relatives, but those relatives, they don't have very strong attachment to the members of the extended, or rather to the members of the nuclear family. So nuclear family is smaller, extended family is larger. The networks are quite diverse in the extended family, and the lines of relationships are also quite many. And I want us to look at the various types of family. One is monogamous family versus polygamous family. So family can be based on the number of spouses that exist. So based on the number of spouses, we talk of monogamous and polygamous families. A marriage, they generally exist at two levels. That is, a single spouse or more than one spouse for the purposes of discharging familial functions. A marriage that permits a person to have one spouse is called monogamy. Just one spouse, monogamy. And the one that permits a person to have more than one spouse is called polygamy. Polygamy can also exist in two forms. We have what we call polygyny and polyandry. Polygyny is a polygamous union or marriage whereby a man is married to more than one wife. So if a man has 2 wives, 3 wives, 4 wives, that is called polygyny. Polyandry is a case in which a woman is married to more than one man. So if you have a woman that has 2 husbands, 3 husbands, 4 husbands, and so on and so forth, that type of polygamous marriage, we call it polyandry. Polygyny can further be divided into surrogate and non-surrogate marriage or family. Surrogate family is whereby a man has married more than one wife, and the wives are either biological sisters or very close relatives. So that if a person A has married his first wife, and the second wife is a biological sister to the first wife, or a first cousin to the first wife, then that marriage, we call it surrogate marriage. But there are also instances where the wives that are in a polygamous union are not relatives. So that you can have the first wife is from region A, the second wife region B, the third wife region C, the fourth wife is from region 4, and another in region D, and there is no way in which they are related. They are not relatives. That type of polygynous marriage, we call it non-surrogate marriage. Another important aspect about polygyny that we need to bring out is what we call co-polygamy and hard polygamy. Co-polygamy is whereby the wives of a polygamous man are all settled in one compound. So that if a person has 2, 3, or 4, regardless of the number of wives, and he has constructed their houses in one compound, so that in one compound all the women are accommodated in one compound, in one homestay, that type of polygamous marriage, we call it co-polygamy. But there are also instances in which a man decides to construct a homestead each separately for the wives. So that if this man has, say, 3 wives, then each of the 3 wives has their own established homestead. That type of polygamous marriage, we call it hard polygamy. With regard against polyandry, we can also have 2 types of polyandry. Polyandry can be fraternal or non-fraternal. A polyandry that is fraternal is a case in which the husbands that belong to the woman are biological brothers or very close relatives. So that if woman A has married 2 husbands, and the 2 husbands are biological brothers or very close relatives, such as first cousins, then that kind of polyandry, we call it fraternal polyandry. But we also have a case in which the woman has more than one husband, but the several husbands that she has, they are not related to each other in any way. So that husband A, B, or rather the first husband, the second husband, and the third husband, they are not related to each other. That kind of marriage arrangement, we call it non-fraternal polyandry. Family types is also based on where a person marries. Now, based on where a person marries, we can have endogamous and exogamous family. Endogamy refers to the practice of marrying someone from within one's own ethnic, clan, or group. For instance, if I'm a person of the Luo community and my culture insists that I must marry a wife from my own community, or from my own clan, or from my own group, then that kind of marriage, we call it endogamous marriage. Endogamous marriage is common in society where communication interactions with external groups is quite limited. So that if we don't have avenues, advanced transportation systems, advanced cases of commerce, and higher education, where people are able to meet and exchange ideas, exchange and develop relationships, including those that end up in marriage, then that kind of condition will make it difficult for us to interact with the outside world, and therefore the most likely partner we're likely to have is from within a given socioeconomic setting. That is now the case of endogamous marriage. There are certain times when cultural pressures to marry within one socioeconomic and ethnic group are still very strong in some societies, even in Kenya. Although we don't have strong cultures that prohibit intermarriages, but most communities, especially the older generation, would, as much as possible, urge their children to marry people from within their communities. That's the case of endogamous marriage. Then we have what we call exogamy. Exogamy refers to the practice of marrying outside the group. So that if I'm from the Luo community and the practice is that I must marry an Luo woman, then that would be a case of exogamy. So this type of family or marriage is common in societies in which kinship relations are complex, and therefore it pass through for marriage large groups who may trace their lineage to a common ancestor. What this means is that there are certain times in which there are fears in some families that because of the complex nature of kinship ties or relations that are found in some societies, it's not easy for an individual to know a person whom he or she is related with or related to. So the fear that you are likely to marry a person whom culturally you are not permitted to marry, either because you are distant relative or something close to that, that fear imposes a norm of exogamy in some societies. So that the fear that you are likely to marry somebody who is from within your clan, from within your tribe, or from within your lineage, which culturally under incest taboo is not permitted. There's such society insists that you marry from outside, so that there is no possibility that the individual you have married you are related in one way or the other. Families can also be categorized based on the place of settlement upon marriage. Once couples have come together, where have they chosen to live now as husband and wife? So the place of cohabitation by couples determines whether a family is patrilocal or multilocal. What do they mean? Multilocal is whereby couples settle down in the residence of the husband or the groom's household. For instance, if a man marries a woman and then they decide to settle in his father's compound or in his own compound, if he has established one, then that kind of family arrangement, we call it patrilocal. So that you marry a woman and then you go and settle with that woman in your parents' compound or in your own compound as a man. That kind of family arrangement, we call it patrilocal. Then we have what we call multilocal. Multilocal refers to a residential arrangement whereby couples reside in the household of the bride. For instance, if a man marries a woman and then they decide that they are going to establish their residence in the compound of the wife's parents, then that kind of marriage arrangement, we call it multilocal arrangement, and we shall call that family a multilocal family. It is how important to note that most of the families are patrilocal. Most of the families in Africa and around the world are patrilocal, largely because of the patriarchal system that exists in most societies. So in many instances, upon marriage, the couples go and settle in the compound of the bride's, rather the groom's parents or the groom's own household. Rarely we have cases where after marriage, a man and a woman choose to go and live in the compound of the bride. I don't want to say that it's not there, but if at all they're there, they're quite rare in our societies. Family types can also be categorized, or other families can also be categorized in terms of how parenthood and ancestry of individuals or children in a given family, as well as inheritance rules and regulations, are determined. Based on this criteria, we have two types of families: patrilineal and matrilineal families. Matrilineal is a distant system in which kinship groupings, roles and relationships are traced exclusively through the male side, and it is largely found in patriarchal societies. Matrilineal, on the other hand, is a system in which kinship groupings, roles, and relationships are traced exclusively through the female side. Again, this type of descent system is associated with matriarchal societies. When we look at these two types of descent, what needs to come out clearly is that a family arrangement that adopts either of the system would mean this. For instance, take a couple, say, where a husband is from community A, the wife is from community B. If the family is patrilineal, it means therefore that the children that are born out of that union will trace their lineage, their ancestry, as well as inheritance rules from the father's side. And therefore, they will adopt the names and cultural practices of the father. On the other hand, if it's a family that is matrilineal, then children that are born out of that union will adopt the inheritance rules, the lineage, as well as the ancestry of the mother. Based on this, most of the societies, especially in Africa, are largely patrilineal. But there are also instances where these rules are not strictly being followed, so that we have cases where both types of lineage or descent systems sometimes are being adopted. For instance, in a case of single parenthood, if a father is totally absent and fails to take care of the children that he has given birth, that he has sired with a particular woman, and totally disappears and abandons the entire responsibility of child rearing to the mother, then it is quite obvious that the mother will shoulder the entire responsibility. In that case, the child is likely to adopt the culture and the lineage of the mother. Otherwise, this is fairly an exceptional case. A family can also be based on the strength and the responsibilities assigned to the couples, so that we have partifocal and multifocal families. A partifocal family is one in which the father takes the lead role in making decisions and in raising children. A multifocal family, on the other hand, is one in which the family structure is centered around the mother and her children. Most families have traditionally been multifocal because most societies emphasize the need for a responsible father and the need for the father to be the head of the family. However, there are also emerging cases where women are prominently emerging as significant players in the running of family affairs. And to that extent, therefore, we are now having a lot of cases of multifocal families. Several factors have been attributed to this, but the main factor has been economic empowerment of women. Women are now able financially, they are strong economically, and as such, they are able to take care of a lot of responsibilities that traditionally have been undertaken by men. So much so that we have families where the education of the child is being done by the mother. Provision of economic needs such as shelter, rather basic needs such as shelter, food, and others are largely being provided by the mother. Again, women are holding significant positions even in politics, and as such, the economic and decision-making power has substantially increased. We have also had campaigns around the world that have called for equal treatment of women in terms of employment, politics, and other decision-making responsibilities. In that sense, therefore, women have learned the art of strong decision-making, and as such, they are increasingly becoming quite much instrumental in terms of taking care of the economic and social needs of the families. In that case, therefore, we have had so many cases of multifocal families emerging. However, these may not be the only reasons that are leading to the emergence of multifocal families. And therefore, I want to challenge the students to take some time, spare some time to analyze and explore factors that are leading to the rising cases of multifocal families in our society. Is it more to do with the empowerment of women, or is it more to do with men are becoming less and less responsible, and therefore not taking their work properly? So women have taken advantage of that vacuum to now come in prominently and now play their rightful role in society, more so the management of family, in terms of provision of basic needs and in terms of making important decisions that are needed in such families. Let us now turn our attention to the functions of the family. At the introductory part of this discussion, I mentioned that the family is the oldest institution, meaning the first institution ever invented by man, and it has remained strong today. This suggests that it has important responsibilities that it plays in the sustainability of society. Because if it were not as important as it is today, then obviously over the years it would have faded away. Because what happens in society is that structures in society that do not have important values, they are neglected and they are left to die naturally. So the fact that family has remained as strong as it is and as it was, and society continues to value it, suggests that it has important roles that it plays in society. So let's look at these roles. One of the roles is called regulation of sexual activity. We need to notice that all societies regulate the sexual activities of their members to some degree. And this one is done through a well-developed norm, which is called incest taboo. Incest taboo is thought to be universal because it is practiced by all societies in one way or the other. This taboo prohibits sexual relations or marriage between certain relatives, such as people who are very close to each other, siblings getting married to each other, or siblings getting married, rather children getting married to their parents is highly prohibited, or first cousins, or close relatives, depending on how what each society considers as close relatives. And therefore, it is important that sexual activities within the family is regulated, so that it is not a case in which a person chooses whoever he wants to engage in sexual activity with. Again, it should be noted that the institution of the family through marriage is the recognized structure in society that permits sexual activities. So, why is sexual regulation important? It is important because through sexual regulation, the society protects the principle of legitimacy. And legitimacy here emphasizes both the social and legal recognition of the father of the child. Remember that a child born in society must have a mother and a father. So when it comes to recognition of the child, we need a case in which the child that is born is considered by society as legitimate. And legitimacy here has two dimensions: social and the legal legitimacy. Legal legitimacy is largely scientific in nature, ability to scientifically prove that so and so is the father of the child in question. And this one is normally achieved through the DNA test. But that is not sufficient. The other one is social legitimacy. Legitimacy socially means that a child born is sired by a father or a man whom culture permits. For instance, culture does not permit certain sexual activities between certain people. Therefore, if a child is born out of a sexual encounter between people whom culture does not permit, then that child will be regarded as socially illegitimate. It does not mean that child does not meet the basic norm of social legitimacy. For instance, if a child were to be born out of a sexual encounter between a sister, rather a lady and her biological brother, or a daughter, or rather a lady and her biological father, or a son and her biological mother, then obviously culture does not permit in the first place a sexual encounter between such relatives, and therefore the child that is born out of that union or sexual encounter cannot be regarded as legitimate. Some cultures, such children are normally killed upon birth because of the belief that they are going to face a lot of social stigma that could impair their normal human growth and development. Another important function of the family is reproduction, or what we generally call procreation. In every society, the family is the approved social unit for the performance of the replacement function. And therefore, societies establish norms that govern childbearing as well as rearing. And these norms determine such things as who is eligible to marry and to bear children. The norms also determine the number of children that a society considers appropriate and the rights and responsibilities of parents. It should be noted here that societies, the number of people in any given society is never constant. They reduce from time to time because there are people who die, and there are also people who leave that particular society and migrate to another place. So the reduction in the number of members of a given society in any given place need to be placed, and this replacement is done through production. So children must be born to replace individuals that have either died or migrated to other places. Otherwise, if this is not done, then over time, persistent death and migration might lead to the extinction of particular members or a given society in a given area. And this might not be good for the advancement of humanity. So for that reason, therefore, procreation is elevated as an important function of the family. And indeed, it is the primary chief function of family and marriage. Main reason why people marry is to get children. So it's an important thing that is there. But reproduction function goes beyond just looking at children that are born. It also looks at the norms, also provide who can bear children and who can keep those children or rear those children, so that people who are mentally disturbed completely are socially not permitted to have children because they don't have the mental ability to take care of their children. Again, people who have not attained the minimum age that society regards as fit for one to be a father or a mother. Again, such persons are not permitted by culture to give birth to children unless under exceptional circumstances such as rape. So that it is important that this type of regulations is tightly guarded to prevent cases where children are giving birth or are becoming fathers. Again, this function or production insists that those who give birth to a child, both couples, must take a significant role in the upbringing of those children. Otherwise, there would be no purpose upon which those children will be born. The children need to be taken care of, being fed, being supported socially, psychologically, and also being protected from harm from various forms, so that the children can have a decent life as much as it is practically possible, or as much as the parents can afford, so that in the end we have children who are good, who are strong, who are healthy, that can take care of the society in the future. I also need to emphasize that the number of children born is also a function of society. It's not the couples that decide how many children they want to give birth to. Another important function of the family is socialization. Socialization is a process by which members of society are taught and learn how to be responsible members in terms of understanding their cultures, their beliefs, norms, and standards set by their societies. They are also taught the language of their culture and also the kind of roles it is that is required of them to play as they become adults. For instance, girls learn how to be daughters, how to be sisters, how to be friends, how to be wives, as well as how to be mothers. They also learn their occupational roles a young age, and also when they become adults. Boys too learn how to be sons, how to be brothers, how to be friends, how to be husbands, as well as how to be fathers. Equally, they too learn the kind of roles that is required of them to play in society when they become of age. It is important to note here that being a daughter is more than just being born by a particular woman or a particular parent. Being a daughter is a social responsibility. Being a sister to someone does not mean merely that you are born by the same parents, or being a wife does not merely mean that you are married by someone. There are certain responsibilities that are attached to being a wife and also being a mother. The same thing applies to male members of society, so that you've got to learn what it means to be a son, what it means to be a brother, what it means to be somebody's husband, and as well as what it means to be a father. These are roles that are taught when, from the time we are born, the time we get married, the time we have children, and later on, even when we become grandparents. So that socialization is a lifelong teaching that members of the family are given right from birth until death. Every day in many societies is an opportunity for members of society to learn something about life. So that learning in terms of civilization does not end. It only ends when you die. Because each time as you advance in age, the responsibilities change and the expectations also change. So when you talk about civilization, it's the process by which individuals acquire those behaviors, beliefs, standards, and motives that are valued by society and which enables that member of society to undertake his or her role and also to be recognized as being an important member of that society. While the learning process of socialization can be undertaken by several institutions, but the family is the first and primary agent of socialization, because it is the first institution that we encounter the moment we are born. So it's an important one. This is an important role that family plays. So that if things don't work well in life, either drunkenness, or we become irresponsible parents, or we are not hardworking, at the end of the day, when this matter is looked at critically, it boils down to the kind of socialization or the kind of upbringing that we underwent. If it was not properly done, then it will impair our developmental process. We may not become we may not become as responsible as expected for us. So it's a key function that all families play and will continue to play. Economic provision is yet another important function of the family. The economic function of the family is achieved through division of labor, which in many cases is based on sex and age, so that some roles in society or in the family are assigned to male members, while others are assigned to female. Again, certain roles are assigned to young people, and others are assigned to adults and the elderly, so that this type of arrangement ensures that at least each and every member of society has an important role to play in terms of providing for members with regard to economic needs, so that members of the family are also socialized to work hard for the benefit of the entire family and also to cooperate in producing what they need to survive. So that cooperation among members of the family is important in terms of providing the economic needs of the family. Each person is trained or socialized to understand that the effort they put in terms of what they're doing is meant not only to benefit them as individuals, but also benefit other members of the family. So that we are largely oriented towards what we call a collectivist ideology, so that we see ourselves as we, as us, not as me and I, so that whatever little that you're able to produce, you do it for the benefit of other members. Societies also encourage norms of intergenerational reciprocity, whereby parents or adults take care of their children or young people with the hope that they too will take care of them when they grow old. Indeed, when we are young, the elderly, adults and the elderly people in society takes care of us. We are fed well, we are clothed, we are sheltered, we are taken to school, and we are prepared until we become now adults. That time we become adults, our parents become old. And when they become old, they now become dependent on us. So most societies encourage the so-called intergenerational reciprocity. That is, different generations should be there to take care of each other. So that when we are young and independent, it was our parents to take care of us. When we now become of age and our parents are now elderly, they also become dependent. It is now our turn to take care of them of them. This norm is highly encouraged, and people who fail to take care of their elderly parents, or parents who fail to take care of their children, are highly ridiculed, and in some cases they're excluded from certain important societal activities because they are perceived as not being responsible members of society. So they are socially subjected to shame for not being mindful of the welfare of their children. Equally, when we become of age and our parents are now elderly and we don't take care of them, again, we are ridiculed. We are ridiculed for not taking care of our parents. So it is the responsibility of different generations, depending on their position, power, and ability to take care of those that at any one time may not be in a strong position to take care of themselves. So we must all work hard as members of the family to ensure that we provide for each other, that we support those of us who are in need. Again, it is a function of family that ensures that this one is achieved. The other function of the family is emotional support. That is, at any one time, we need the support of each other and members of the family. Not economic, but for this matter now, the emotional support. So the family guides members' psychological development through the provision of a loving and caring environment. We all want love, we all want to be taken care of. So that it is important that this is provided, because if the environment that we are being brought up is not caring, environment that we live is not caring, not supportive, then it might impair our psychosocial development. The family also acts as a social insurance against bullying as well as being sickness. I just mentioned this earlier, that once we grow old, we expect the able members of the family to take care of us. So that is the insurance. We take care of those who are young, and insurance against old age, so that when we grow old, we expect them to take care of us. When we are sick and are unable, we expect other members of the family that are healthy to take care of us, take us to the hospital, visit us at the hospital when we are admitted, help us to nurse our wounds if we are injured, help us to feed us. Sometimes they're totally unable to even wash us, clothe us. So this one is important. It's an important function that the family provides. That is part of, again, the treatment, the social treatment that we are given as members of the family. The family members also offer support and comfort to members who are bereaved or recovering from traumatizing events. If we believe we have lost an important relative, maybe among the family has lost his or her spouse, again, it is upon the other members of the family to provide comfort to them, to provide support to them, to be with them, to help them recover. For those of us who have undergone a lot of stress, like loss of a job, like sexual harassment, and other forms of degrading treatment, such treatment can be so much traumatized. And when we have trauma, it is also expected for family members to help, to support us socially and emotionally, so that they are part and parcel of the team that is helping us towards the recovery process. That is, again, an important role that family plays. Furthermore, it's also the role of the family to protect its members against physical attacks, and other degrading treatment. Again, if you're being attacked, again, members of the family should come to the aid of each other. If you're being ridiculed, if you're being belittled by others, again, the work of the members of the family to come to our aid and help us, so that we are not made other things. We family members are meant to be there for each other, so that we feel loved, we feel protected, and we feel cared in the hands of other family members. That is an important function of the family. Social placement is also another important function of family. Social placement is the idea that children inherit the social identity of their parents and partners. Parents confer their own social identity in terms of race, ethnicity, religion, and even social class on children at birth. These statuses may be ascribed, statuses with which individuals are born, such as race, ethnicity, nationality, social class, and sometimes religious affiliation. Families also bequeath to their members a pattern of descent and inheritance rights. We must trace our lineage as people who are born. As children, we must trace our lineage. So we trace our lineage from the lineage of the family that we are born. So that you say, I belong to this ethnic group because your parents belong to that ethnic group. I belong to this race because your parents belong to that race. I belong to this nationality because your parents belong to that nationality. And also sometimes social class. However, we need to notice that social class might change. You may be born in a poor family, but through hard work, good luck, and other events in your life might change your fortunes, so that you come, you acquire wealth, and now become a better person in terms of socio-economic class. Sometimes again, you might be born in a wealthy class, And again, misfortune and other things might come on board, and the process again prevent one from becoming a better person in life. So where do we trace our family tree? This tree, we trace it from our family. So it's an important function that the family gives us. This is principally the main reason why, for instance, if a lady gets pregnant, and then the father of the child comes against the lady and says, I'm not responsible for that pregnancy, it leaves the lady in dilemma in terms of whom will I say is the father of the child. So fatherhood is not just the biological father. You also want to know how will I trace the lineage of my child, especially if it is in patriarchal societies where they've adopted matrilineal structure. It is an important thing that we need to understand our origin, we need to understand our lineage, and this one is provided for by the family. So it's also an important function. One has now turned to characteristics of modern families. So I noted earlier, there are certain changes that have occurred in modern families that have made them look slightly different from the other families that we knew. So one of them is what we call egalitarianism. Egalitarianism, first, is a philosophical perspective that emphasizes equality and equal treatment across gender, religion, economic status, and political beliefs. In traditional family, the marriage was contracted by the parents, with marriage being based on the principle of male dominance and female obedience. In modern family, there is less parental control on whom to marry, and mate selection is now done by the partners themselves. We are not saying that parental role in the choice of partners is completely out. It's there, but not as strong as or central as it used to be in the traditional families. Furthermore, in modern family, the woman is not a devotee of man, but an equal partner in life with equal rights. It's not like what used to be there before, where the man was the one in charge and took care of everything and made no consultation. And therefore, the husband does not dictate things to the wife, but rather involves her in decision-making processes. And she can decline to make instructions over whose decision she was not a party to. Now, this is egalitarianism. That is participatory. In modern families, the decision-making process is more participatory. The man of today is not the traditional man that was absolute, that was authoritative, almost authoritarian, and whose decision was law. Things are changing. And modern families, more and more, they are adopting a participatory process of decision making. If you want to buy land, members of the family, the husband, the wife, and for the children. If you have become of age, we'll sit down and discuss the issue about now. If you have money that you want to invest, it is important that family members be involved, so that decision-making processes in modern families are largely participatory. It is not dictatorial the way it was with the traditional families. So this is an important departure from what the family was known for traditionally. So this principle is important because the decisions that people make today, they have important bearing in the lives of all members of society, rather of the family. And it's therefore important that all members of the family are engaged and involved. Let their input be heard, even if the input does not constitute final decision that is finally arrived at. But at least the involvement is important to make them feel part and parcel of that particular family. So participatory process is also good in unifying family members and also ensuring that the decisions that are made is collectively supported by all family members. Another important feature of modern families is the one that deals with role playing. As opposed to traditional families, where all roles that go to the development of the child, growth and development of the child, and upbringing of the child was played by the family. Today, the family only play a select roles, so that modern families have given up many functions which were traditionally performed by the institution of the family. And these functions are increasingly now being performed by specialized agencies such as hospitals, nursing homes, schools, and even non-governmental organizations. Furthermore, traditional tasks of the household such as cooking and baking, cleaning and washing are also performed outside the household by specialized agencies. In addition, many families are increasingly consuming industrially processed and manufactured foods instead of preparing them at home. We are talking of laundry work being outsourced, so that when clothes are dirty, we take those laundry. We have institutional homes, for instance, where we take the elderly, where we take the children, where we take members of the family that are physically disabled. Traditionally, all these people that are frail or personal or unable to take care of themselves, they were being taken care of by members of the family. It is not the case these. We tend to take them to other places. We tend to take them to institutional homes, nursing homes, homes for the elderly, and others. Schools are also coming on board to help in the upbringing of the child, not like before, whereby the parents and the grandparents and even the aunts and elderly and elder elder siblings were taking an important central role in the education of the child through teachings. This is not the case because most families are now nuclear in nature. The absence of the grandparents, the absence of the aunts, and the absence of other relatives that serve as tradition teachers are no longer there in the life of a child. To that extent, therefore, families are finding it more convenient now to take children to your homes. If a child has personal problems, psychological problems, traditionally, such a child would be sent to the uncle, to the aunt, or to the grandparents, or the elderly siblings for counseling. Today, we take such children to professional counselors for guidance, counseling. So that modern families are many with a very select few roles. Otherwise, majority of the roles that were performed in the families traditionally, they have now been taken over by specialized institutions. Another characteristic of modern family is that they are philocentric. Philocentric families want in which children tend to dominate the scene, and their wishes determine approaches adopted by their family to many issues. Modern families, the child is a major decision maker, not like before where adults would sit down and make decisions and then impose it upon the child. These days, a child is so much central in terms of the decisions that go into his or her life, to the extent that we rarely punish our children, because again, most most countries have developed laws that prohibit punishment of the child. Our children have become more demanding and impatient, so that if they say they want to be taken out for lunch, they demand it. They don't request it. And sometimes they're never patient. Tell the child, wait, I don't have the means today, I'll take another day. They demand it. It is because they have become, families have become child-centered. Children are getting their wishes. Sometimes they even decide which school they want to go, which clothes they want to wear, which type of food they want to take. Sometimes a particular food is cooked. When it's presented at the table, the child declines to take, saying that I prefer to take another food and not this one that is brought before the table. Parents would wish, many often times, now to go with the children to do shopping for their clothing, for fear that if they buy the clothing that they think are good for the children can reject. Children might decide or demand that they don't want to attend a given school, and they want to attend a different school. But sometimes they get their way. It's because the modern family has become so much Philicentric. We let children run the show. This was not the case in traditional families. Of course, traditional families, parents were tough, and parents ensured that children are obedient and they follow instructions as required. Consultation was very limited in terms of the issues that children's opinion might be sought on. And so are different families. The ones that were brought up in is not the kind of family our children are now growing up today. The ones that we have today, our children have become more individualistic, egocentric. What they want is what they want. And sometimes parents have no option but to give. Children have also been emboldened, again, like I noted earlier, by legislations that have banned corporal punishment on children, and many times emphasizes on counseling. Again, it's not easy for a parent to counsel, because counseling, the kind of child-parent relationship that exists, might not permit for free of counseling. So again, parents find themselves in a situation in which they have children, some of whom they have no control over. Perhaps sociologists have also explained the rising cases of deviance, of indiscipline among children in society, largely on the fact that children have had their way at family level, and therefore the freedom and the notoriety that they've acquired at family level sometimes extend it to the wider society, and this explains the rising cases of alcoholism, violence, and general deviance that we witness in society. But the reality is that is what it is. Perhaps we may need to, even as we permit children to have some say in what we do as parents, we also need to decide on certain things that we don't allow them to have their way. Because too much freedom again and controlled freedom again might lead to a society in which we're talking of complete lawlessness. Another feature of the modern family is that they tend to be small in size. So that modern families are characterized by fewer number of children compared to traditional families. And most families, when asked why they prefer fewer children, some cite high cost of medical care and provision of basic needs, such as other are the main reasons for wanting to have fewer children. Again, people also getting married at a much later age compared to some time back, because potential couples are spending considerable amount of time in schooling and in career development, so that by the time people now decide to get married, they're doing so in their late 20s or 30s or early 30s, which means that the fecundity period, the period within which they will have the childbearing period reduced. Again, the fact that they also committed to their career means that they don't want to give back often, so they would prefer having fewer children to enable the balance between child rearing responsibilities and career development. It should also be noted that in some cases we also have couples or families that prefer being childless. They don't want to get children at all, and they do as much as they can to ensure that they remain. Some even go to the point of allowing for medical sterilization, so that they are not able to conceive, because their desire is never to have children at all in their marital life. Again, childlessness has also been boosted by the availability of reliable, productive health technologies such as contraceptives. Others also feel that we don't need children because, like in the Western world, we have institutionalized homes, such as homes for the elderly. fact that one of the major reasons why people had or preferred to have children was that children will take care of them when they grow old. Now the fact that we have now institutionalized homes means that they don't care whether they have children or not, because they are homes that will take care of them and therefore will play the role that the children could have played if the children were to be there. So modern families, they are largely small compared to the traditional ones. If, for instance, you were to sample, say, 10 or 15 people, young people, and you ask them how many children you would wish to have, majority of them would cite 2 children, some even 1. Quite a few number would mention more than 2 children. This already tells you that the value, the desire to have a small number of families is also being adopted or valued at a much younger age. Of course, what I've discussed is not exhaustive in nature. There are certain areas that I would want all of us to spend some time and explore. Let's do have undertake more research on this. Then need to undertake library research to understand more about these issues. Hold discussions, informal discussions with our parents, with our colleagues elsewhere, just to see how well we can understand this issue better. For instance, the issue of the persistence of polygamy, especially in the African families, is still persistent. So why is it there despite a lot of campaigns against the practice? Why is it still there? It's also important for us, like I mentioned earlier, that multifocal families are rising, that is, female-headed families are rising. Why is it so? Are there factors beyond economic empowerment of women that's contributing to this? So this was an area that I would want us to spend some time and discuss, read books for discussions, and then get a better understanding of why it is there. Perhaps the other issue that is also important for us to understand is other issues that are emerging in the chain of the family, such as same-sex unions, childless couples and families. Why is it there? Contract or short-term marriages. We have cases where people decide and say, we want to only marry for 5 years. After 5 years, we stop. Or we assess how it has worked. It has worked well for us. We need for another 5 or more years or less. These are things that are there. Why is it that they're there? And how are they perceived in a conservative society such as those found in African continent? It's important that these things look at them. Again, we also need to look at ways on how single parenthood affects the socialization of functional family. It's important that both parents are present in the life of a child, but due to certain factors that are sometimes beyond the ability of one parent that exists. We have had cases where a single parent is taking the role of entire family. But we noted earlier that socialization means that children, male and female, are socialized